The escape pod screamed through Kepler 442b's atmosphere like a dying comet, its hull glowing cherry red as it carved a scar across the alien sky. Inside, Zefkari the Rendered, apex predator of the Vorth Imperium, hunter of 1,000 worlds, fought unconsciousness as the emergency systems failed one by one. The impact crater was modest by galactic standards, barely 30 meters across, but it sent tremors through the small human research outpost nestled in the valley below. Dr. Sarah Chen dropped her coffee mug, watching the ceramic shatter across the lab floor as alarms began their urgent symphony. Meteorite impact bearing 270, announced Area, the station's AI, detecting metallic debris and unusual energy signatures. Sarah was already pulling on her environmental suit. The other researchers, all 6 of them on this godforsaken rock, were either asleep or buried in their work 3 levels down. As the xenobiologist investigating potential alien artifacts fell squarely into her jurisdiction. The trek to the crater took 20 minutes across the planet's crystalline sand dunes. What she found there made her stumble backward, heart hammering against her ribs. It wasn't a meteorite. The creature that dragged itself from the wreckage stood nearly 3 meters tall, even hunched over its injuries. Its carapace gleamed like polished obsidian, segmented plates covering a frame built for violence. 6 arms ended in talons that could shred steel, and its elongated skull housed rows of teeth designed for tearing flesh from bone. Bioluminescent patterns pulsed weakly along its flanks, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Zefkari lifted his head, compound eyes focusing on the small figure approaching him. A human. He'd heard of their kind, the newcomers who'd stumbled into galactic politics barely 2 centuries ago. Prey species weak, soft, yet this one approached without fear. Sarah's training screamed at her to run, to call for backup, to follow any protocol except the one her instincts demanded. The creature was clearly injured, dark ichor seeping from cracks in its armor. One of its arms hung at an impossible angle, and its breathing came in labored, whistling gasps. "Hey there," she said softly, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. That looked like it hurt. Zefkari's translator implant sparked to life, parsing the human's simple words. He tried to rear up, to present the intimidating silhouette that had sent countless species fleeing in terror, but agony lanced through his thorax. The crash had shattered 3 of his internal carapace plates. Instead of fleeing or attacking, the human did something unprecedented. She sat down in the sand. "I'm going to guess you're not from around here," Sarah continued, pulling her field medical kit from her pack. "And before you think about eating me, you should know I taste terrible. Too much coffee and not enough sleep." The apex predator, hunter of the void, terror of a dozen star systems, found himself genuinely confused. This creature should be cowering, begging for mercy, or at minimum trying to establish its place in the food chain through some display of submission. Instead, it was making jokes. Sarah activated her suit's external speakers and began humming softly, an old Earth lullaby her grandmother had sung. She'd read studies about how music could calm injured animals. Whether it would work on a 3-meter-tall alien killing machine remained to be seen. Zefkari's aggressive posturing faltered. The soft vibrations reaching his auditory receptors triggered something unexpected in his neural pathways. His species had evolved beyond such primitive comforts eons ago, engineering themselves into perfect instruments of predation. Yet somehow this simple melody stirred memories buried deep in genetic code. Memories of safety, of nurturing, of being small and vulnerable. "I'm going to come a little closer now," Sarah announced, rising slowly. "I've got some medical supplies. Nothing fancy, but it might help with the bleeding." She approached like she would a wounded bear, respectful of its power but determined to help. When she reached into her pack, Zefkari tensed, expecting a weapon. Instead, she withdrew something soft and fibrous, a thermal blanket. "You're going into shock," she observed, noting the creature's rapid breathing and the way its bioluminescent patterns had dimmed. "This will help regulate your body temperature." Without ceremony, she draped the emergency blanket over his hunched form. The metallized fabric looked absurd against his fearsome silhouette, like wrapping a nightmare in Christmas paper. Zefkari stared at her in bewilderment. In his 8 centuries of existence across campaigns on 47 worlds, nothing had prepared him for this moment. The human, this tiny, fragile being that he could dismember without effort, was trying to care for him. "Why?" The word emerged as a subsonic growl from his vocal chambers. Sarah paused in her examination of his injuries. Why what? Why do you not flee? I am Zefkari the Rendered. I have consumed the hearts of champions. I have made graveyards of cities. Yeah, well, Sarah said, gently probing around his damaged arm. Right now you're Zefkari, the guy who crashed his space car and needs medical attention. We can discuss your resume later. The casual dismissal of his fearsome reputation might have enraged him under different circumstances. Instead, Zefkari found himself making a sound he hadn't produced since childhood. A low, rumbling trill that his species associated with contentment. Sarah smiled behind her helmet visor. There we go. Now I need to set this arm and it's going to hurt. A lot. But if we don't stabilize it, you could lose function permanently. She worked with practiced efficiency, using her field splints and medical tape to immobilize the fracture. True to her warning, the procedure sent waves of agony through Zefkari's nervous system. But instead of lashing out in pain and fury as his instincts demanded, he found himself focusing on the human's gentle humming. When she finished, Sarah sat back on her heels and surveyed her work. Not bad for field medicine, though I recommend getting proper treatment once your people come looking for you. Zefkari tested the splint carefully. The pain had subsided to a manageable throb and mobility was partially restored. He looked down at this remarkable creature who had shown him more kindness in 1 hour than his own species had in centuries. I do not understand your kind, he admitted. Sarah was packing away her medical supplies, but she paused at his words. What's to understand? You were hurt, I helped. It's not complicated. But I am apex predator. You are prey. This is against all natural order. Maybe, Sarah said, standing and brushing sand from her suit. Or maybe natural order is more complicated than who can eat whom. Maybe it's about choosing to be kind when you don't have to be. As if summoned by her words, lights appeared in the sky, the distinctive blue-white glow of Vorth Empire search vessels. Zefkari's people had found him. Looks like your ride's here, Sarah observed. The rescue ships descended with military precision, their searchlights flooding the crater. Armored Vorth warriors emerged, weapons ready, clearly expecting to find their commander either dead or under attack. Instead, they found him sitting peacefully beneath a thermal blanket, sharing comfortable silence with a human. The squad leader approached cautiously, confusion evident in his stance. Commander Zefkari, are you well? I am functional, Zefkari replied, then added something that sent ripples of shock through his warriors. Thanks to this human. Sarah waved awkwardly as the aliens processed this information. He's got a broken arm and probably some internal injuries. I've done what I can, but he needs proper medical attention. The Vorth medics moved forward, their scanners confirming her assessment. As they prepared to transport their commander, Zefkari turned to Sarah one final time. What is your designation, human? Dr. Sarah Chen, and you're welcome. Zefkari considered this for a long moment. Then with great ceremony he removed one of his ceremonial arm guards, a piece worn only by the highest-ranking predators, and placed it at her feet. A gift, he said simply, from one apex being to another. As the rescue ships lifted off, carrying the injured predator back to the stars, Sarah stood alone in the crater, holding an alien artifact worth more than her entire research station. But what she'd remember most wasn't the value of the gift. It was the look in those compound eyes, ancient, fierce, and utterly transformed by the simple realization that strength could be measured in ways other than the ability to kill. In the distance, her coffee grew cold in the abandoned lab, but Sarah didn't mind. She had a feeling this story would be worth telling for a very long time. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, Zefkari the Rendered learned that sometimes the most profound victories came not from breaking one's enemies, but from having one's own assumptions gently, irrevocably shattered.